What happens when you gather the UK's boldest legal minds on a sun-drenched retreat in Ibiza and press record? Welcome to the Lawyers Retreat miniseries, a special edition of the Legally Speaking podcast sponsored by Clio. We've partnered with the visionaries behind the Lawyers Retreat, the wonderful Burt and Kirsty Pappin, to bring you real, unfiltered conversations from Cala Carbo, where strategy, succession and scaling and sunshine meet. This isn't your average CPD. It's leadership with a view, innovation with a cocktail, and well-being with purpose. You'll hear from trailblazers rethinking the legal playbook, with episodes recorded poolside, mic hike, and even post-yoga. 2025 is our year of 10xing the show. This mini-series is just the beginning, so let's get into it. Welcome to the Legally Speaking podcast, or shall I say welcome back to the Legally Speaking podcast here in Ibiza. Name, title and organisation?
Name, Jodie Hill. Title, Managing Partner, and it's Thrive Law.
Yes, and I must say one of my best friends in and around the legal community and an amazing human. But let's get into your zone of genius. Why is burnout still so common in the legal industry?
I think it's still so common because of the practices we adopt, and really we need a systemic change when it comes to the way that we run our law firms, and thinking about leaders leading by example and not just doing what they always did. Yep. So practices, what I mean by that is things like the billable hour and the really long hours that people work, the way that we're remunerated and rewarded within law firms often relates to billing more and working more rather than output-led. So I think it requires a systemic change within the whole sector, and that doesn't happen overnight. Yeah. And also, I think the fact that we now have access to all of our cases on an app on our phone is amazing if you want to work remotely, but it means you can never switch off. Yeah. So there's a real issue around boundaries and being able to really clearly define those boundaries, both from, a client perspective as to when you're available, but also from your employer's perspective as well.
Yeah, no, really well said. And what does a well-led law firm look like in 2025?
Thrive Law? No, I'm kidding.
But it is. I think it's a great case study.
But it is. I mean, so to give you context, so ACAS featured us for both neurodiversity and mental health when it comes to a case study. Yeah. So if anyone wants to kind of see more details as to like specific things that we've done that SMEs can do, that's why they featured us, not to blow our own trumpet in that sense. It's more to show you that you don't have to be a huge law firm with a massive budget to make a positive culture. Yep. Actually, it's about the small daily intentional habits that we create. So thinking about creating psychologically safe places and thinking about how we can integrate technology to benefit the team and not to overburden them. So I think a lot of firms are adding loads of stuff in and people are like, I don't even know which piece of tech to use for what. Yeah. And so that creates a negative spiral for a lot of people because they don't know where to start. So being really intentional with our communication and the methods of communication, being really clear around that and really understanding how we all work best. So we use a thing called a license to thrive, and it's all about understanding how we all work best and also what we all struggle with, because as a neurodivergent leader, I struggle more than probably most of my team. But rather than making it about me and my disability, it's about how do we all work best so that they understand my needs, but I also understand their needs, and we find somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And coming from a sort of recruiting and thinking about sort of onboarding talent, you do a great job of educating law firms about reasonable adjustments and things they need to be thinking about. Can you share some advice for law firms when it comes to that perspective, particularly from a hiring side?
Definitely. So the example of the license to thrive is something that we've actually integrated into our onboarding. So when someone joins a team, they not only read their team's license to thrive, they create their own, and there's a sense of feeling heard right at the beginning. Yeah. So they don't have to go to their line manager and say, oh, I really struggle with this, I really need this. Actually, everybody talks about what they all need and how they work best. So it's done in a positive way. And also think about people when they are neurodivergent, particularly, their process processing is different. So just because you might be able to process all of that information in a 1 week period, someone else might need a month to process that. So so spacing things out in a way that's meaningful to that person. So, you know, sometimes you'll assume that if someone's more senior, or they'll be fine, we'll just rack through it all because they can absorb it all. But actually, if they are neurodivergent, or say they've been in the same job for 15 years and then they move, it's a lot of information for people to take on board. So just think about how you structure that process and aligning it with the values, as well as understanding people's needs. And we use Thomas Perform. I don't know if you've used Thomas Perform.
Yeah, absolutely. Big fan. And from your events, learn more about that as well.
Yeah, so I sit on their advisory board from a scientific and innovation perspective, and the work that they're doing to help understand how we connect better has been really amazing to be part of that research, and also just to be able to use the tools. So that type of tech can be helpful in understanding if you want to build your own license to thrive. You don't have to do it all manually. You can use bits of tech. We use a combination of creating a PowerPoint, but then using bits of tech to fill that information in, as well as some information that's just from our own self-awareness of what we know we do and don't like. Yeah. But some of it we're not aware of, and it's about really trying to get those insights from different formats so that we can really try to understand ourselves and each other better. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And obviously you're expert in all of this when it comes to all things mental health, you and running a law firm, and you make it sound quite easy because it's your zone of genius. And my worry is perhaps for certain law firms, they say, it's amazing, Jodie, you've got this all set up, we don't know where to start, which you're touching on. So could you maybe share one practical way to help law firms start, because they may be in fear of overwhelm, or what if we get it wrong? Yeah.
Well, do you know what? It's better to get it wrong and learn from that than to do nothing, because for me it's nobody's going to make any changes if we just sit still. We have to take the steps, and for me, certainly, I don't get it right all the time, and I take risks, and I try to learn from those. I try to not call it a mistake, but try to learn from those mistakes, because essentially what you're doing is you're trying to understand what works for your business. So whatever I do for my business might not work in your business, but it's understanding, start from the beginning. What are you trying to achieve? Ask your team, ask them, what do they want? That we so often assume what people want and need, and the reality is we actually need to just ask them. And there are companies like Champion Health and other assessments that you can do where you can anonymously find out what people need. Are they struggling with sleep, work overload? Is it long hours? Is it musculoskeletal pain? All of these different things that perhaps we have no idea about. I certainly didn't until I asked my team. And you don't have to ask it in a way that's so direct either. You can anonymise it if you feel that that's the place where you are at in your business. And if you haven't got the funding for that, then create a Google form and just do it anonymously that way. So there's lots of different things you can do, but just start somewhere that feels comfortable for you.
Yeah, and one thing I think you've done at Thrive Law is you've built an incredible culture, and I think that's helped through you being an authentic leader and really caring about your people. And you invest in, well-being retreats. This isn't your sort of first time you've taken your team to beach times down in Cornwall. How important, from building a culture perspective, is it to genuinely care and invest that time and put in energy into things like this?
It's so important, and especially in a hybrid world, because we don't see each other all of the time. And for those of you who don't know, we are hybrid, but we have people based in London, Devon, Manchester and Leeds. So it's quite spread out across the UK. And the Leeds team will go into the office occasionally, but we have to be really intentional with how we socialise and how we collaborate. So for us, that's been part of our wider strategy around maintaining and developing that culture, especially as you bring new people in. Every year we have quarterly events in person. We do birthdays in person, and we'd celebrate each other's birthdays. And then we also do, once a year, we do a full weekend away, which is a combination of a bit of training, and then it's just like a few times we've been surfing, we've gone to like massive inflatable water parks, which some people didn't enjoy. But you just have to let people sit out. Not everybody has to join in. It's just about going somewhere different, away from the office, and letting people get to know each other. And when we do the feedback from that, that's the bit they love most. It's just being able to just have tea together, walk on the beach together in an environment where they're not thinking about work.
And the one thing that stood out to me, the word you said, is you make people feel heard. And even just sharing there that you ask for feedback after, you're continuously trying to listen and really make sure those individuals understood that they've been heard. Because when you're seen, heard and valued, you really want to kind of work for that environment, and you feel safe, you feel included. And I think that's how everyone can thrive. So I guess with that, do you want to tell people more about Thrive Law, and have you got any exciting plans? Are you hiring? Like, what's going on at Thrive?
Yeah, so we've actually spent quite a lot of time over the last few months updating all of our tech. So we've moved to loads of different technology pieces in the firm. So if anyone's gone through like tech overhaul, they'll know the intense amount of time that takes. So we are in the process of developing that people strategy around recruitment. So we'll be looking at a few roles over the next couple of months. So keep your eye out on our careers page for those roles as we start to scope those out. And we're doing quite a lot of our own events at the moment as well. So nice. I know you've been to the People Summit. We're planning to do another one in November, and we're also partnering with Timpsons to do a summer social, picking up on our previous event on culture and how to create a thriving culture. This will be part 2, and a bit more of a networking, like just a summer social, but us getting the founders together, and trying to get people to talk about how they've built their cultures, and all those cultures are so different. So just trying to get people to share more. There's so many amazing organisations out there, and we're all very, very, very different, but equally have our own uniqueness that we bring when it comes to culture. So you can usually pick something up from each of those rather than trying to replicate somebody's culture. You pick like little nuggets out. So that's what we want to try and do more of this year. And there's loads happening in terms of events and press things that we're working on, which is really exciting. So.
And you just continue to keep doing great things, bringing people together, educating, inspiring. And I guess before I let you go, you've sort of landed on the Lawyers Retreat. Why did you want to get involved, and what have you been doing whilst you've been here?
So I landed last night.
Yeah.
I wanted to get involved because obviously wellbeing is a huge part of my life, having had a breakdown in 2017. And I actually came from London after speaking at the ACAS conference around the fact that we're in a mental health epidemic at the moment, and what can we as employers do to overcome that. And I was talking about a law change that I'm working on, which actually I'm going back to London to talk about. So for me, it's about creating that space, especially as a founder, because it can be incredibly lonely to run a law firm or work in a legal business. It's very fast paced, and you'll have seen this from the work that you do and the people that you speak to. So creating that space to work on the business is really important, but also considering wellbeing as part of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you're first class at everything you do. And I'm sure you would have inspired more of our listeners that haven't yet met the wonderful Jodie Hill. And if they want to reach out to you, learn more about Thrive Law, what's the best place or places for them to go? Feel free to share any websites, any social media handles.
So it's at I am Jodie Hill on TikTok and Instagram. And by the way, I've been doing a TikTok a day since August. So let me know what you think.
Can I just say, interject there, I learn something new every day. They're so practical, tactical, when you link it to legislation or updates or things. So highly recommend checking out Jodie's content. Bite-sized, easy to understand, and very, very helpful. Yeah,
so there's loads of stuff on like ADHD and employment law on there. And then on LinkedIn, Jodie Hill, and then thrivelaw.co.uk. I also have a speaking website, which is jodiehill.co.uk, which has got loads more information about the speaking that I do. And I'll also be sharing more about the law changes once I finish in Parliament. So hopefully I can share a little bit more. So if you follow on the socials, and drop me an email if you want to hear more.
Absolutely. It just leads me to say thanks so much for coming back for the third time. And I would just encourage our listeners to go check out Jodie's original episode on the Legal Speaking podcast, where she shares more about her whole story in a very authentic fashion, one of our most listened to episodes, and her Thriving in Law mini-series that we've done together with some of her incredible team members. And of course, share this episode too. But just leads me to say thanks so much for joining me here in the wonderful Ibiza. What a setting. But for now, over and out.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you like the content here, why not check out our world-leading content and collaboration hub, the Legally Speaking Club, over on Discord. Go to our website, www.legallyspeakingpodcast.com, for the link to join our community there. Over and out.